Hey, you didn't tell me about this.
That's all right. Just rock to it.
Hey, y'all. Welcome to Cross Politics. Thank you for joining us on the Fight Laugh Feast Network. If you want to be in a conversation with us, email us at contact@fightlaughfeast.com. We have been working hard every day for you.
It's a jam.
Working for you. Now you can work for us and join the club.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, how you like
all
that?
Right. Just give them
We're
job
working for
offers.
you. You can work for us. Join the club. You get a free T-shirt, all sorts of stuff in the club portal, and of course, you get special platinum members when they sign up. Angels get their wings in heaven, and you don't want to leave any angels wingless in heaven.
Wings, yeah.
No,
I did not approve that.
That's all.
Yeah, he just went Catholic something.
I
on that.
I don't even know if that's Catholic. What is that?
It's worse than Mormon. All right, with us on the line right now, we got Mr. Jonathan Oh man, I'm gonna blast it.
Jakubowski.
No.
Jakubowski. I did it. He's a Christian husband, father, author, business leader, and millennial. He played football at Bowling Green State University and received his master's degree in public policy from Georgetown University. For his day job, Jonathan leads an innovative and award-winning startup called Smart Solve. Oh. He lives in Ohio with his wife and 4 kids, where he serves as executive committee chairman of the Wood County Republican Party and sits on the Wood County Board of Elections. And the reason we got him on for today is he is the author of a brand new book called Bellwether Blues, A Conservative Awakening of the Millennial Soul. Jonathan, thanks so much for being on Cross Politic.
Thank you, guys. It's such an honor to be here.
So, talk to us first of all about millennials. What is a millennial? Why do millennials matter?
Well, the millennial has been defined in many different ways, and there's a ton of stereotypes out there that relate to what a millennial is. But if you look at the research, most of the breakdowns for how a millennial is defined begin with graduating by the year or after the year 2000, or having been born early enough to remember 9/11. So you're looking at 1980 to 1996. That's roughly how you define the millennial generation by birth year. The reason it's important is it's the largest electoral demographic in America. And while most stereotypes say that they don't go out to vote, in 2018 they came out in record numbers.
You say in the title of your book, Awakening the Millennial Soul. I'm actually surprised. I didn't know that we had souls. So this is new. But one of the things that was really interesting right at the beginning of the book, I've always made left and liberalism the same. And you make a separation between leftism and liberalism, and you do it by talking about Tom the Baker. Could you kind of walk through that for us?
Sure, absolutely. There's been a huge shift, and I think we all know them. There's a lot of people we know that have identified as Democrats but are feeling like their party has left them. And millennials feel the same way. They feel this shift towards leftism in a significant manner, and there's movements that have been subsequently created, like #WalkAway, where you have hundreds of thousands of people who are walking away from the left. And the example that you referred to in the book with Tom the Baker is a classical liberal would champion the freedom of Tom the Baker. If Tom the Baker were forced, for example, to bake a cake by the government, somebody came in, let's say it was a Nazi, and wanted him to bake a cake for the Nazi party, and Tom were to refuse that, classical liberals would come rushing to his defense and say, no, he does not have to bake the cake. We're defending his First Amendment rights enshrined in the Constitution.
Right.
Now, what's happened since then is a shift all the way to the left, where now Tom the Baker is baking a cake. In walks in a gay couple and says, hey, we want you to bake a cake for our wedding. Tom refuses to bake that cake on the basis of his convictions. And now, rather than defending Tom, they attack him, trying to destroy his income and his business.
So when you think of a classical liberal, who are you pointing to? Who would be a representative of that particular party?
A unicorn?
Yeah, because when you say this, I was trying to figure out, I don't know anybody that I can think of. I mean, it's definitely not Bill Clinton. Like, who would you point to?
Well, I think we can go back to the Blue Dog Democrats. In recent history, think about the Blue Dogs who were very much pro-life. They may have had a difference of opinion on tax rates and welfare and the fiscal measures of government, but very much embracing of First Amendment freedoms. And there's actually 6 things that I delineate as differences between leftists and classic liberals. I think the classic liberal ideology goes back to Thomas Jefferson and James Madison. A lot of that thought was in the foundation of the framing of our government and the institutions that surrounded it. But the 6 things that I recognize or acknowledge in the book are race, free enterprise, national sovereignty, the view of America, free speech, and Western civilization.
So I was, even as you're making fun of Bill Clinton there, so go Knox. But I mean, remember Bill Clinton signed the Defense of Marriage Act.
Right. He would have got stoned probably in this era.
Oh yeah. I mean, that just is a little bit of a snapshot of the shift that's happened. I think this divergence that's happened between a classical liberal Democrat and leftism.
Yeah, that's
certainly
right.
So, talk to us a little bit about. So, one of the things that's unique about your book is that it's full of stories.
Yeah.
7, in fact, I think. And why tell stories in the middle of a book about politics?
Why not use facts?
Well, we try to use facts as the foundation, but those books get pretty boring pretty quickly. I think I'm a big fan of novels, and we all know this inherently. Stories are powerful. The stories have the ability to persuade, and nobody can refute your testimony. Revelations talks about that, right? It says, you shall defeat him by the blood of the Lamb and the word of your testimony. So in this book, I really sought to try to thread the needle by bringing alive the people that I've seen in this county, my county, which is a swing county in a swing state, where I'm seeing this shift and this movement, and what caused the millennials in my book to make the greater leap of not just leaving the left, but actually embracing principles of conservatism was tied deeply into their stories, and it was the best way to tell it.
So one of the stories that really caught my attention, and I just want you to briefly kind of go through this. I think this is a wonderful person introduced to our audience, is Aaron Lawrence. Could you just kind of talk briefly about his story and why you thought he was somebody to even start out with?
Yeah, quick testimony to his story. Actually, I was on an airplane coming back from a business trip and was finishing the edits to the editor and his edits to my edits, which is a bunch of editing, right? Yeah. And as I'm finishing writing his story, I'm reflecting upon the influence of his father and his brother, and just thinking about how much of an honor it will be for people to read about his father and how influential he was. Because Aaron grew up in inner city Cleveland. His extended family was on welfare. Some of them depended upon drugs, engaged in crime. But his father established a legacy, and that legacy remains. So I'm on this plane. I'll get back to the story in a moment. You just got to hear this.
Yeah.
As I get off the plane, I get a text, and that text came from my wife saying that Aaron's father had passed. He had just died right as I was getting off of the airplane.
Wow.
And I was blown away by it, because the testimony of this man and the story now that hopefully thousands will get to read about is something that refers to how intricately involved he was in Aaron's life and his legacy. Yeah. So I was really honored to have a small hand in helping them extend his story to others. And his father was pivotal because, in a place in an era where a lot of Aaron's friends were without fathers. They didn't have father figures in their lives. They didn't have a dad at home. That was the primary difference that really directed Aaron down the right path. Down a path of truth and hope and understanding what it means to become a man himself. And one of the principles of Aaron's father's life was that he would never accept welfare. He would refuse it. He wanted to make sure that he provided for his family, and he saw the dangerous effects of becoming dependent upon it. So Aaron goes to college. He leaves the home, ends up becoming one of the first in his family to be able to attend college, and ends up finding a lady. They get married, and during their marriage, in the early years of the marriage, Aaron was really challenged by getting a job. He came out into an economy that had just experienced the Great Recession and was really challenged by that. And it was at this moment that he had a decision to make. The decision was, will I accept just dependency upon the government dole, or will I find a way to pursue income and create a job and develop a resume? And he ends up choosing the latter. And in the process of that, he begins to think differently about the way he votes. In 2008, as a man of color, he said it was just accepted. You didn't even think about it. It was voting for Barack Obama. It was just not even a question to consider. But in this evolution of thought towards engaging the workforce and raising a family, and most importantly, there was an awakening of faith in his life. It changed his perspective and caused him to change his vote.
Wow.
He's skimming the story. It was beautiful.
Yeah.
It was really beautiful. One of the things that I caught on really quick to something that you were doing was that, you would usually, talk about the topics. You talk about fatherlessness, and this is when the main. You start off the stories with fatherlessness and how it hurts our economy, how it hurts our culture, and how it hurts our people. But you also attach a face to this whole topic. It's not just the principles. I think that's what you were getting at when you talk about. Look, we talk about facts, but then these facts actually are connected to real people and real issues, and it matters. And so you do this constantly. It didn't take long before I started realizing another pattern in your book, which was somebody grows up in a kind of mediocre Christian family, and then as they go out, they connect themselves to other Christians who are living strong Christian lives, and then through that process of culture, community, and relationship, they become transformed, and then their whole political positions and persuasions change. And so that was really, I just got to give you that compliment. It was really masterful. And I just wanted to say, man, it made the book just pace so fast when reading it. So I just want to say thank you for doing that.
It really makes sense, though, from a Christian perspective, and probably something that, I mean, this is a testimony against us in many ways, and that Christians haven't seen the necessity of putting truth together with people.
Yes.
I mean, the incarnation is the declaration that God became flesh for us. So it's not just the love of God, it's not just the truth of God, but love became flesh.
Yes,
truth became flesh.
Hey, preach that, man.
Righteousness became flesh in Jesus. And that is in the process of actually happening then as God redeems individuals, human beings. Now that same love of Christ by the Holy Spirit is taking residence in real people.
Yeah.
And so it makes absolute sense that would be persuasive, since that's what the gospel is.
That's how God functions with us. Hey, I don't know if you're ready to get there yet, Jonathan, but why? And we're already kind of talking about this a little bit. But why are conservatives so bad at communicating their message? We've kind of talked. We've kicked this around on our show over the last couple years.
I was like Aaron. I never saw a conservative or Republican ever show up in my community neighborhood or talk about why they had better positions. You know, why is it that we're so bad at this?
I think there's a few reasons, and I really try to wrestle with that at the end of the book. As we go through the stories, first I open the book by talking about the shift from classical liberalism to leftism, and then I talk about the county that I live in and why it's a special and unique county and why we should pay attention to it within the millennial demographic being strong in my county. And then I go into those stories and then close the book with a critique of modern methods of conservative persuasion. And the first answer is the why. I don't think conservatives know why they're conservative, why they vote. I don't think they understand the deeper reason and the foundation for that. In many cases, in my story, which I include in the book, at least a small snippet of it, is when I went to graduate school, I had a strong conviction for why I believed in Jesus.
Yep.
I had conversations. I had read apologetics was a part of my growing up. So I had a strong conviction for why, and there weren't many people that had the ability to persuade me otherwise. In fact, I was in graduate school. I remember I had a number of people that I was able to share the gospel with in a deep manner. But when it came to politics and political philosophy, studying public policy especially, a lot of these conversations arose, and this was right at the height of President Obama's ascendancy in 2008. And I remember my colleagues in graduate school were so effective and persuasive at their arguments that I said, I don't even know what I believe. I really need to go back. And I've voted Republican for my entire life just because I grew up in a great family. But I don't know if I can carry these convictions forward. So it took me about 5 years after graduate school of getting deep into the roots of what America is, what the biblical call is for truth, where truth stands. Neither political party has a monopoly on truth, by the way. I think we all know that. But I think when Republicans have been at their best, when the philosophy of conservatism has thrived the most, it is when it is based upon eternal principles, not politicians or personalities. And those principles are what I try to outline in the book as I communicate an effective and persuasive why. That's the first thing I think conservatives must unlock if they're going to be persuasive to the millennial generation.
You have a part in your book that made me stop and think about what you were saying. It was really good. You were on a tour, I think, through a history tour, and you went through Harriet Tubman's. Where was that at?
In Philadelphia.
In Philadelphia. Okay. And you said, I don't want to mess this quote up because it was so good. You said that the transition for pro-choice to pro-life is the Underground Railroad for the millennial mind moving from left to right. Ooh. Can you walk through that? I love that. It's such a great, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, that was a revelation to me as well as I was visiting this museum, it's Museum of the Constitution, and having studied all these documents and understanding them deeply, there's certain heroes that come out of the framework. And I think these heroes need to be revisited. Harriet Tubman is one of them. And there's a movie that I think that just came out about her. Yeah. We need to watch her story. And Frederick Douglass is another one. Booker T. Washington. Yep. These are all people. We talk about Chalk Knox, your goal of awakening the black church. These people are heroes who were I arguably Frederick Douglass, I think, was the greatest human being of his time. Reading his autobiography, there's a lot about his life that I think we should seek to emulate. So with Harriet Tubman's story, the reason I stated what I stated is I believe as she was fighting for the slaves, bringing them to liberty, she was going down the dirty, dark roads against enemies that sought her life. And I think of all of the positions in the Republican Party platform, one of them that I am thankful Republicans have embraced is that of life. Yeah. And it's a part of the conservative philosophy. We go back to the inalienable rights in the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they have been endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, and that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Life is the first, most fundamental right. And that's what conservatives understand and get, and that's why we must stand for the pro-life argument. And if we understand why that conviction is so critical, and we can convince and declare that persuasively to others, I think we can bring them through to an understanding of truth. It all starts at life. After that, everything becomes much more clear.
Mm-hmm. And that comes, though, that means we have to win the argument that there's a creator.
That's right.
Yeah. I mean, that's been one of the most insidious things in our culture has just been questioning the fact that there's not even a creator, that we're accidents.
Is there a God?
And if there is no creator, then you're right, then there's no inalienable rights. Yeah. Much less life, liberty, or the pursuit of happiness.
I'm just glad you didn't pull a Joe Biden when you quoted that.
And all that stuff.
So you say eternal principles. And when obviously you're pointing back to your Christian faith when you say eternal principles. But how does that play out? Because most of us believe that there's a separation between church and state, and that God should not be brought into politics. Politics is a different arena. How does that play out then?
Yeah, it's a great question, because I don't think any of us on this conversation would believe in a theocracy as the ideal form of government here in America.
Well, it depends on what
it depends on how you define theocracy.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm gonna send you a
book. But go ahead.
I can't wait to read it. Eventually, I'm when Jesus is king. That's where I want.
There's your theocracy.
But he
got it. You nailed it.
But
I'm saying eternity. But for right now, before his coming. Before he comes back as the Messiah and as king.
He's not king right now?
Yeah, he's king right now, too.
Okay, all right.
We'll have to figure that one out.
That's another show. That's another show.
Os Guinness would stand with me on this point. I was able to interview him.
Did Os Guinness write scripture?
Hold on, Chalk Knox.
Oh, okay. My bad.
Let him finish.
That's another show.
Another show.
And that goes back to Federalist 51 as well, which is I think there's reasons why there's governments that are like Israel was at the Exodus. There's governments like Iran would be today. Those are governments that are theocracies, right? They're tied to faith. They're tied to specific religion. And if you do not believe in that, religion, you can't be a part of that society.
Right.
And then there are governments, nations that are absent of God. Think of the Soviet Union. Think of China. Yeah. Think of North Korea. All these nations that fight it. And then what makes America so unique is the balance of the First Amendment, the balance of freedom of faith and freedom of conviction, is that we are a nation under God. All right. What that means is we acknowledge that our nation would not have its existence with the laws that we have unless God created them, unless God gave life, unless God gave us the founding tenets that allow us to function and live in a society. Yeah. However, one does not have to believe in the God who created these laws to flourish in our society.
That's right.
As long as an individual follows those laws, they don't murder other people, as long as they pursue the law-abiding nature that citizens are called upon, they can also flourish in this society. Yeah. But the prerequisite is that we acknowledge that there's a God who brought us these laws, and we can go back to Sir William Blackstone and commentaries in the laws of England way back in 1765 when he talks about, and this is another part of the Declaration of Independence, the laws of nature and of nature's God.
Right. And so on and so forth.
So on and so forth.
So on and so forth.
It's okay. We'll take you as an honorary theocrat.
Yeah.
You described everything pretty well.
We agree with you.
So I think this would probably be the good time to talk about the reservoir. I love the way you broke this down, the golden triangle of freedom. And go ahead and just kind of break down what that golden triangle is and how it works.
Yeah, so the Golden Triangle of Freedom, this is another Os Guinness origin that I took and then kind of adopted to the way I was writing the book. He argues there's three fundamental tenets that make America what America should be, and that is faith, family, and freedom. And I'm using family as a term that goes along with virtue. Those two terms go together, and I'll explain that. And I think this is one of the best ways for conservatives to communicate this message to millennials, by the way. If we can understand these three fundamental pillars upon which a nation will flourish, it will give us a more persuasive opportunity to communicate these principles. They're all interdependent upon each other, even though they're independent of each other. And so in the book, I talk about reservoirs. Imagine reservoirs that are providing water into a house. If one reservoir starts to lose its currency, the amount of water that it has, that's going to impact the other reservoirs because we're going to be pulling from those reservoirs or expecting those to supply. And that makes the situation ultimately untenable as soon as those reservoirs get so depleted that we no longer have them. Now, let me talk a little bit about the reservoirs, and I'll end with faith because I think that's the one that we'll all enjoy the most. The first is freedom. You know, as Americans, it's in our songs, it's in our anthems, it's in our pledges. It's woven into our DNA. But really, freedom is only half-baked if we only understand it to be freedom from or negative freedom.
Right.
True freedom is both freedom from and freedom for. What am I free to do?
Yep.
I am free to take care of my neighbor. I'm free to ensure that his rights are honored and protected. I'm free to make sure that my children are engaged in understanding and practicing the habits of the heart. So you must understand freedom if you're going to be an American as not just libertarian, I'm free to do whatever I want, no tyranny on my life, but you must also understand your responsibilities and duties as a citizen. Now, freedom's important, but you also have to have virtue. And virtue is tied to family because, as we just talked about with Aaron's story, a father matters.
Yeah.
We know this. God makes us this way. Having a father and a mother matters significantly in our ability to flourish. So with a family and virtue, there's a lot of quotes that one could pull looking back to why virtue matters so much. The one that I'll tell you today is from Samuel Adams. This is a big word, diminution, there you go. The diminution of public virtue is usually attended with that of public happiness, and the public liberty will not long survive the total extinction of morals. We are a nation of laws and not men. And there's a lot of quotes that surround that. If our nation, all of a sudden, we believe that murder was okay, and 51% of us said so, and might made right, guess what? No longer can we have freedom. Because then a tyrannical, and look at France as a great example of this, look at their revolutions and the many times that there's tyranny in the streets, and finally it took a Napoleon Bonaparte to come in, and execute justice. So that will increase the scope of government, thereby decreasing freedom. But we know this. We cannot have virtue. We can't live lives of righteousness. Our righteousness is as filthy rags, Scripture says, unless we have faith. And faith in America is the common bond that really made America what it became. You take out faith, we would not have had a United States of America. No Great Awakening, no United States.
Right.
George Whitefield made 9 missionary journeys from the 1730s onward, up and down, from Boston down to Savannah.
Yeah.
And during those missionary journeys, there would be thousands that would hear him speak live. In fact, Benjamin Franklin was one of his close friends who would help fund some of his orphan work in Georgia. And Ben Franklin estimated that over 40,000 people could hear him speak as clearly as we're speaking right now, with no mic,
That's
no
incredible.
system, no aid.
Yep.
And he would be speaking, and these people would come from all over the countryside as he's coming to speak because he was famous. He was the first famous American before George Washington.
Yeah.
And all these people would come and they would hear him speak, and they said that they knew revival had hit America. When as he would preach the gospel, really simple, that we don't have to go through a mediator between God and man. Jesus Christ paid that price, and he alone. When they would see these coal miners out of coal mines, their faces black with soot, because the tears coming down their cheeks, they would start to wash away all that black. They said they knew revival had hit America. Thousands of people with their tears coming down their eyes. And this is really, in essence, as soon as people understood that they don't have to go through a mediator to have access to the presence of God except for Christ alone, Then they began to think about the king and the kingly estate, and whether or not a king is the divine right of kings really came into question. And all this started tying itself together throughout the colonies, which then became states, as they started recognizing, hey, this king and his tyrannical activity is running against what we have as individuals. We have rights, and these rights come from God and God alone, back to one nation under God.
Wow! I just finished George Whitfield's biography by Dallimore. Have you read that?
Oh yeah,
that's a powerful story, and man, that'll put some warmth in your chest.
Yeah,
and you're absolutely right though. I mean, without the Great Awakening, there's no America.
No,
not. And I don't think people get that. I don't think people understand that. The theological underpinnings of the American experiment is profound.
Yeah.
But man, that's some good stuff right there.
Hey, Cross Politic listeners, you guys can go to bellwetherbook.com/crosspolitic to get 50% off on the EPUB version of Bellwether Blues. This book comes out, you can pre-order March 25th, and it comes out May 5th. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah, May 5th, it's going to be widely available, of course, given Amazon's definition of essential, non-essential, and Books A Million.
This is essential.
I appreciate that, Pastor. I don't know what they're going to say in terms of stocking the shelves, but you can come to our website, and I do think you can get it at Bellwether Book, but I think the URL we're commonly putting out there is bellwetherbluesbook.com.
Okay.
Bellwetherbluesbook.com/crosspolitic. Give them that cross-politic bump.
Hey, Jonathan, thank you so much, man. I can't recommend this book enough. Go get it. It's great. It's phenomenal. If you're single, get married. If you're married, have kids. And if you have kids, go baptize them. Until tomorrow, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. Go fight, laugh, and feast. This is Cross Politic.
I like what you did with that music.
You like that new music?